What's up YouTube, and welcome to my first video where every scorecard will be completely correct. Absolutely bonkers, I know. Also, this video is going to be ranking the playable cast of Chrono Trigger. I won't lie, this list was pretty tough to put together because honestly, I love this entire cast and the game does a pretty good job of making them all unique and useful throughout your journey. Spoilers, out of the score of 15, bottom to top has a range of about only 4 points over 3 different categories. The categories we're going over today are as follows. The story. This is an overall score of the character's story arc, their background and relevance to their timeline, and impression on the world. This game does a pretty good job of making everyone feel like they play a part. However, some arcs are just very strong compared to others. We aren't going to include any plot points in games such as Chrono Cross, as that is an extra game that adds a bit of an unfair advantage to some characters, Luca. So we're looking only at the base game of Chrono Trigger. Now, there are some stuff that will link between the two a little bit, but it is going to be anything that you would find in just Chrono Trigger. There is some extra stuff that gets added in the Steam/DS version, but we will address that as we come to it. Usefulness. Here we're looking at how much the character is available to play throughout the game, but more importantly, how strong they are as a standalone character. This will go off of their stats and their single party techs for the most part. Synergy. In this category, we will look at how good the character is based on the party makeup and how well they would sit in there. Basically, is this character one that can be plunked in with any 2 other characters and make the group better, average, or a little bit worse? With that being said, let's get into the cast of one of my favorite games ever. Number 7 brings in Marl. No! My bestest girl hits the bottom of the list and I'm so sad. Being the Princess of Guardia, you would think she is very regal and collected. In reality, she's a bit of a firecracker, wanting to go out in the world and experience it. At times to find her dad, the king. Marl is the reason our story starts, and with her family pendant, sending her back in time. This kickstarts the journey our party takes into time traveling and understanding the effect they have on the world and timeline. Marl is around for pretty much the entire story and is always pushing the party to do the right thing and to try and save as many people as possible. Later we find out how fractured of a relationship she has with her father since her mother died, showing us why Marl has become the young lady she has. They do reconcile and all is well before the final confrontation with the big bad. It is revealed in later versions that Marl and Krono get married and become King and Queen of Guardia, and to allegedly be attacked by Dalton's army. Whether they survived is left up to interpretation. As far as Marl is in battle, she's not the best. If a healer is what you're looking for, Marl is there for you. She doesn't have any multi-target healing, and you usually have the proper tonics to take care of what you need for the most part throughout the game. Her attacking magic is kinda meh. While having the heal early on before learning magic is nice, it feels like she falls off hard until she learns haste, which is her saving grace spell in my opinion. Other than that, I feel like she doesn't learn a good spell until her final one, which is Life 2. Her physicals aren't very good either, and because she uses a ranged weapon, you can't make her physicals stronger through power tabs, as it only gets stronger through the hit rating. I think the main spot you'll have Marl shine is in the dual techs. Triple techs are cool, but I feel for most of the time, it's about the dual techs in this game. She will either have techs that heal with higher efficiency, or make use of her magic stat to put out either single target or decent AoE damage. She's not a bad character by any means, but she's more a jack of all trades kind of character versus the specializers. And there is a jack of all trades character that just does everything better as well much later in this list. Her story is quite involved throughout the game as well as after, but it feels very straightforward and only ankle deep. But it shows the power of love not just for one's family but for humanity in general, and her deep determination to fight for it at all odds. Her usefulness as a single character feels lacking as she doesn't do one thing well but can be an okay support character to other characters' strengths. Carried by niche spells like early heals and haste, her synergy in any given team does feel a bit better, but she does leave something to be desired. Overall, still a strong start to the list. Number 6 has Lucca. Lucca is our party genius and mechanic. If there is a problem, she will look at it logically and try to figure out a solution, even if one doesn't seem possible. It's in her blood and upbringing to be the fix-it girl. After figuring out how to manipulate the portals for time travel, Lucca is with the party for the entire game. Her main arc is actually quite lacking, just being a character who wants to fix the future. We do learn about her love for technology, which brings Robo to the party. She is quite adept at figuring out computers and the like, even from the far future in lickety-split. Convenient if you ask me. All of this needing to fix things stems from her childhood trauma of watching her mom get stuck in the Leg Crusher 3000 and wanting to not have people get hurt, but helped from technology later on. She has a lot of involvement leading up into Chrono Cross, but that's outside our jurisdiction for today. Lucca does get a chance to save her mother in a redo, which creates a bit of a time paradox, but this game has so many that we just kind of turn a blind eye to it. Lucca is here for the damage, and the fire damage is quite potent for effectiveness. She does come with Hypno Wave, which puts enemies to sleep to varying degrees of success, as well as Protect to help reduce incoming physical damage. She's the same as Marl for physicals, where it's all range, so it's based off of the hit stat. The one thing I couldn't figure out is if it goes off of hitter strength when they're doing the bonk when they're fighting an enemy really close to them though. This weakness does get negated a little bit with her ultimate weapon, the Wonder Shot. The weapon does damage based off of the seconds of the internal clock, so it gives it a feel of randomness. You can either do piddly damage or massive amounts, depending on what the time is set at. Usually if you have Lucca, she's shooting the Blunder Shot or throwing out big damage spells. Most of her attacks are AoE, granted, some are based off of enemy proximity for such attacks like her bombs. Flare being the final spell is definitely a well worth one to work towards at the end of the day. The same thing can be said about Lucca's synergy with the party. She is there to drop some massive deeps, as the kids would say. With some characters, she can actually hit different elements as well, such as Antipotent being Shadow. She also has one of the strongest hitting dual attacks with Robo and Double Bomb, but it's based purely off of Robo's location, losing its usefulness a little bit. Overall, depending on your party makeup, she can either hit different types of enemies in various ways to great effect, such as Line Bomb attack with Frog. With Lucca in the party, you aren't looking to be very defensive. She's here to nuke things down before you get nuked. And that is my game style to a T. Lucca definitely gets held back by her story being pretty basic, but that doesn't mean it's bad by any means. It just doesn't have a lot in comparison to the rest of the cast. This is a character you have access to almost right out the gate and access to during the entire journey. She is good for almost any circumstance if what you're going for is to kill things with some pretty large numbers. Number 5 rings in Krono. It's the main boy protagonist here, not even in the top half. Why is this? Krono is one of the weakest stories to be had in this game. Being the main protagonist doesn't help with his world building much, and he mostly just kind of runs into situations and does what others say he probably should do, what with him being silent and everything. He is the determined kind, and you can see it in his actions, such as sacrificing himself against Lavos and paying the price for it. It's okay, this world has cheat codes and brings him back to life though. He does end up marrying Marl, as we discussed, and becomes King of Guardia, and supposedly maybe even dies to the Dalton invasion later on. He is a forced character in your party for a large portion of the game, so you'll have to become very used to having him around. With Krono being a forced party member, you can bet he is pretty useful. Good strong physicals, access to single and multi-target magic, as well as one of the strongest spells in the game through Luminaire. His magic stat is lacking, but with spells like Luminaire that doesn't really matter much. He also has the life spell, which is sort of useful. It's not a healing spell exactly, and by itself isn't the greatest thing since revives will basically do the same thing, but it's the thought that counts with him wanting to be a party player. His big thing is how fast he is. And speed, I feel, is the most busted stat in this game, and he is chock full of it early on, as well as weapons that add to this stat. They had to make Krono feel good because of how long he is stuck in your party, and I think that makes total sense. Krono does have a healing dual tech with Marl, but otherwise, he has decently hard-hitting attacks of various effects and elements with other characters. Want a stronger version of fire spells? Fire Sword is there. Want to hit everything with something stronger than Laser Spin? Rocket Roll to the rescue. Krono's a pretty good all-rounder since he can do most of what you need, which again, is a good thing since he is a fast character in your party who you will be stuck with for quite a while. There really isn't a lot to say about Krono when you break it down. He's the guy who stumbles through the story with you, being silent so you can put yourself into his place a little bit easier. His moves are pretty good to really good later on, and if you feel like just doing an attack spam, he can do that too, and it's actually kind of effective. If you want to try out his dual techs, there's a good chance you will like the attack and want to try it again in the future. He is the safe pick in the game once you have the full party makeup customization, especially with the fun weapons later on. Number 4 brings in Magus. While this is a character you don't get until you're over halfway through the game, and you only get him if you choose to, He is quite the driving force for the story. While Marl gets everything kicked off for the story, Magus is the one running the show for a large chunk. In 600 AD, we learn he is the head honcho to the war against humans on the Mystic side. We also learn that he summoned Lavos in an attempt to kill him. Why did he do this? Because back in 12,000 BC, he was there as a child, and during the downfall of Zeal, Lavos went berserk, sending the gurus and Magus to different time zones. The entire driving force for Magus is to kill Lavos for destroying his life and his heritage. After the confrontation with Magus, he went back to his time period and snuck in as a prophet so he could take another stab at his revenge against Lavos. After all this, he goes on a search to find his sister Shala after the second go at Lavos in 12,000 BC, and she disappeared. All in all, his story is one of revenge for losing his life and family to the infamous space tick, and one of unending rest until he finally finds his sister, if he ever does. Magus has access to every element in the game and is almost strictly AoE damage. His magic does quite a bit of damage as well, making him a pretty big powerhouse. He also gets his ultimate gear almost immediately upon getting Magus, which means he can become quite the force right away. The biggest knock I have on Magus is that you don't get to play with him very much due to when he actually becomes a party member. That's a little bit of an issue. That you'll need him to catch up on spells since he only starts with 3, so you can take some focus away from other characters just to make him catch up on it. As for team synergy, Magus is an odd one. You see, Magus doesn't have any dual techs. He does have some triple techs, but you need to find a hidden relic that are usually rocks. Then you need to have the proper spells learned and have that rock equipped so you can actually use the triple tech. This doesn't mean that they're bad attacks, by the way. Omega Flare using Magus, Robo, and Lucca is one of the strongest spells throughout the entire game. I think only Frog Flare outdamages it, which also requires Frog to be low HP. Other than that, the only other team-based build Magus has is built off of his Doom Scythe, which gets a damage boost based on if you have 1 or 2 dead party members. So his biggest contribution to the party makeup can sometimes be just that your party is dead. I find that Magus has one of the strongest and most compelling story arcs as well as impact on the story, even though he isn't playable and actually our motivation early game to get through and kill him for the early part of the game. He is a strong character to have in the party, but he isn't the best team player. While he is good to place with others, he will not be playing with them as much as doing his own thing. This is an interesting dynamic, but doesn't exactly make him a good party member as much as a good member to put in the party. Number 3 has Frog. This is our super stoic boy, and what I think is the best story arc in the game. As a young boy, Glenn, as he was known as a human, was bullied a lot and looked over by Cyrus, who was later to become one of the greatest warriors of Guardia. He didn't have it in him to fight back due to not wanting to hurt others. As he gets older, Cyrus pushes Glenn to become a knight for Guardia due to having sword skills that even Cyrus was jealous of. Glenn once again declines due to being unable to harm others. Cyrus and Glenn would go on adventures later on in life to get the hero's badge and Masamune so that Cyrus could take out Magus. In this confrontation, Cyrus gets killed and Glenn turned into a frog, which then becomes his alias. He lives in exile for a while as he felt the failure of killing Magus was all his fault and was hidden from the war. Only once Queen Lean disappears does Frog return to save Guardia's leader. From here he starts to get confidence back after the party brings him the Masamune and Hero's Medal, ready to take on Magus. This doesn't end his arc though, as he visits Cyrus's grave before the final fight to find out how proud Cyrus is of him, filling him with an all-new strength and confidence to take on the world. He really comes full circle and shows that even in your darkest moments, friends and belief can take you out of it and become the best you can be. As far as a party member, Frog is pretty decent. His physicals are pretty strong since he does carry the world's so-called strongest sword. While his magic stat is pretty poo, he can heal not just single party members, but the whole party at once, using magical abilities for damage or have strength physical based attacks as well. He is Marl if she was strong instead of magically inclined, which in this game does take you a little bit further. Frog is funny since I feel he's never really a character that enhances your party as much as fits in nicely to keep the vibe going with it. Our amphibian boy here does have the best story arc in this game in my opinion, going through all the emotions, ups and downs over his life and overcoming it to become the warrior he was meant to be to save the world. While he doesn't have the best attributes to be an everything man, his utility makes up his lacking magic stats, and being able to get physical, unlike Marl, does make a huge difference. Overall, he is a great character who you can place in your party if you're ever unsure of who to fill in a slot. And that's kind of a great character to have around, honestly. Number 2 has Ayla. Going all the way back to the beginning of time, we have humankind fighting against the relentless reptites. These group of people, or tribes, needed a strong leader to pull off this rebellion and fight for survival. Ayla is our chief, and an energetic one at that. We also learn that Ayla is the start of a royal family bloodline, linking her with Shala and eventually Marl. Being a person from the beginning of time, magic wasn't really a thing yet, so her build is all based off of being physical. Ayla is boisterous and straightforward with what she thinks, so much so that even with reduced vocabulary, she definitely gets every thought across with utmost clarity. Due to her time zone and circumstance, she will fight to the death with such a grit and determination it truly is inspiring. When she finds out Kino and other humans have been captured and the other tribes weren't doing anything to save them, she took it upon herself to go save the captives and take out as many reptites as possible if need be. Ayla also lives in the time where we first met Lavos along with the death of the reptites, both happening almost simultaneously and entirely world-changing. She managed to bring her people through tough times while seeing stuff the world has never seen at that point. Due to her time zone, Ayla does not have access to magic, and she doesn't even use weapons, using only her feet and fists. Ayla will beat on enemies with numerous attacks, both animalistic and like a martial artist. She does happen to have a heal as well as a steal, if you feel. While she doesn't have any magical abilities, Tailspin isn't inherently physical, but non-elemental. Ayla alone would very much suffer against physically defensive enemies, and while she is fast and strong, this can be an issue. Luckily, we have other options to help out with this very circumstance. Even though Ayla can't cast magic, she can play well with others who can. Ayla has the widest array of styles of dual attacks throughout the cast. Whether you want to cast a party-wide heal, cast stop on enemies, make her charm have a higher chance of succeeding a steal, or just hitting certain elements of magic while having her attack power get thrown into the calculation for more of an oomph. Ayla plays well with others, take care of herself quite well if the situation arises. Ayla is a very solid character with a strong sense of duty and the will to carry it. Whether she needs to take care of herself, take care of you, or needs your help to overcome the situation, she will do so and give you a high five while doing it. Her charisma can uplift the party during the moments of sadness. As I said before, a very inspiring character who is ready to take on the world for a better tomorrow. Great story, great utility, and despite a glaring weakness, she uses her friends to overcome it. Number 1 has Robo. Bestest boy is Robo, and I will be completely transparent with all of you. As a kid, I hated him. Couldn't tell you why other than he wasn't a magic user and I didn't understand the crisis arm very well, or how he technically has 3 of the 4 elements through his techs. Robo is found in the distant future in shambles until Luca fixes him. He's extremely helpful in getting us to the portal. He gets beat up by his fam jam the R series, who called him defective for forgetting his purpose. Robo, having grown attached to us so quickly, probably from helping him, becomes confused. After we fix him again, he decides to join us and is the logical, almost to a fault, character throughout the journey. Later on, we make it to his home where his main squeeze of a robot tells him how his job was to exterminate the humans. Robo fights for his friends, which is us, and not only takes out his girlfriend who is corrupted, but also the mother brain as well. He shut down the entire factory as it was killing humans for energy for the robots. In another side quest, Robo offers to stay behind and help cultivate an entire forest for 400 years because it served the world better. For a robot, he has a massive heart and wants the best for everyone, and it's what makes him so endearing. Robo is probably one of the strongest characters in this game. He has great strength, access to 3 elements through laser spin, shadow, area bomb, fire, and shock, lightning, and single target as well as multi-target healing. The only main issue with Robo is how atrociously slow he is. Since we mentioned how we will rank without using stat boosting tabs, this will be the main knock on Robo. He also has some pretty bad magic defense, so be prepared for him to get nuked. Overall, he's a very strong character to have. Just gotta wait for him to get his turn, assuming he doesn't get nuked by some big old magic spells. Speaking of Mr. Utility over here, he makes almost any party feel enhanced. Along with being able to do almost anything, he can take on attributes of other party members' magical elements. Need some potent heals? Robo can help out with that. He also has double techs that can put stop on enemies, as well as has access to what I believe is the strongest dual tech in the game through double bomb. Robo is just extremely solid, and with his main weak attribute being the easiest to fix via speed tabs, he really doesn't have many glaring weaknesses. I feel it's pretty obvious, even if you don't like him, as I did as a kid, why Robo is a solid and strong character front to back. Lore and mechanically. There's really not a lot to say about him other than he just enhances your team in almost every aspect. Have fun with him, see all the fun he can do, and you'll be asking yourself how you would ever survive without him being somewhere in your party. And there we go, that's the list, my guys. A bit of a tough one because of how much I love this cast, and honestly, they all have good uses, and I don't really think there's a bad character, just some are stronger than others. And that's perfectly fine. But who is your favorite character to this game and why? Actually, let's even build on that. What is your favorite endgame party and why? If you enjoyed the video, feel free to hit that subscribe button for more, and I shall see you guys in the next video. Ciao for now, kiddos.